Okay, so picking up where we left off, Grady, I'm starting yours up here. Let's see, there we go. So, overall, this looks really good. My biggest note is I think for as polished as all of this feels very, like, bland. Like, I mean, the text is alright, I guess, but it's just the white box at the top feels like, you know, Save-A-Lot brand, like generic cereal. So like I feel like there would be a little bit more design. I like the idea of the illustration just continuing up and this being overlaid in a way that pops it out really nice. Um, Somebody else mentioned the idea of there being like a village on fire here and like there's like a smaller little environment here. So um, anyway, I think that's working really good. Find your words. I'm guessing that it's impossible to find one in here, right? Is this like an impossible word find? Oh, but. I found but. QWERTY. Oh, wait. Now I'm curious. Like, I feel like there has to be some sort of a trick in there. So, yeah, I like this design. Again, the white up here. This feels a little, like I feel like it's always like covered in so much information everywhere you look. That there would be a little bit more going on in here. Like, even if you take like just the dragon again and sort of plop them over here on the side, or I have no idea. Like just playing around with it and just filling this thing up. Cereal boxes are just packed with junk. Um, and I guess this would be on the bottom, which I think is kind of neat. Yeah, so I'm not worried too much about that. Now I'm curious. Calories 700 with milk 800. Protein, vitamin C, folic acid, ingredients, milk, corn, milled people. Sugar, bananas, fire, the fire we killed it with, coconut, sugar, salt. Sorry, I'm just having fun now. Various chunks we found, Puff the Magic Dragon, happiness, imagination. Okay, so +1 for creativity there. Um, as far as the illustration goes, there's very little I would change about it. I think it looks really good. Um, I like the level of style in the illustration. There's areas like right through here that I feel like I want to see a little bit. Like you got these really nice shadows here, and then like this whole area on the upper neck just feels a little flat. So I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more of that in there. I really like what's going on in the background back here. I think that that's working really well. Um, and otherwise, I don't know. I mean, I think that the character is looking good. Um, the biggest thing that's bothered me is kind of this up here in the top and like sort of filling in some of these little corners where they just pack tons of information in. So, good job. Let's move on here. Jean-Luc. Okay, so this is always an issue. Is sometimes you don't get the right font. I'm guessing that this is going to. Oh, you converted it to text, so you're fine. Um, so my thoughts on this was kind of what everybody else's thoughts were. Is that well, I don't know if this is everybody, but I feel like the characters and this grassy area here is nice and everything, but there's a whole bunch of your image taken up with stuff that doesn't really add to it. When it'd be really nice just to see these a little closer. So I wonder if I can actually grab them without the mountains. I have no idea if that's possible. It would probably take a little bit of like manually picking them. Pick all this. Whoop, didn't really want to do that. Picking all this grassy area. Not sure if I got all of it or not. Anyway, Yeah, it'll take some time, but basically to just go through here, grab all of the things that um, are in this foreground and just scale them up. Like if we had these characters, you probably don't even have to scale up the grass. You could probably just get the characters and their shadows. So if their shadows pre-warped. Nope. Anyway, you'll get the idea there. Scale this up. I'm holding shift and then put that a little bit more like that. And I feel like just doing a little bit of that, and I would consider lowering this sort of grassy area where it's a little bit, to where we bring those just a little bit closer. I think that alone like does a lot for it. The other thing is that some of the characters are getting a little lost in the background, and since you have this this the sun that's shining out in here, I was actually, after all of the talk you did about this, I expected this to be bigger. Like I expected it to take up a little bit, like almost as much room as the moon does. And so I think that some people will find it, but the idea that you have these like 13 dots in here, I think you're kind of missing that, especially from the size it'll be on the shirt, which I think would read more like this. So it just looks like there's a white dot in the middle of it. And I would maybe scale that up a little bit to make it read a little bit more. But you can have this yellow sun that's casting these nice rim lights on everything else, so why not cast them on the humans too? So maybe Control C, Control F, paste in front, make that yellow, and then just erase everything that's not sort of a rim light on some of the character. Maybe not that much. Let's see. And I'm being very, very vague with this. And you would be much more specific on what you leave and what you take away, but just by having something like that, do we get a little bit more of an interesting, and I mean, again, it doesn't have to be yellow, but it may be yellow because then you kind of get this like sunrise feel to it. But I mean, you could make it white, you could do the yellow, but then set the opacity on it to something like 50 or something, I don't know, like, so I mean we could do a lot with it to kind of give them just a little bit of that, and so what that's going to do is it's also going to give you the opportunity to bring out some more detail in here. So maybe you would want to do it on some of the hair, you know, you get it on the inside of that rim and then the outside of that one. Maybe there would be like a wrinkle here that you could show as that, like, that's not what I wanted to do. You could you know, show with a little bit of this like yellow blocked out, you know, like wrinkle in the hat or something. That's way more than I would have on there. Maybe pull some of this out, and you know, maybe even something like this to just to show like a little bit of wrinkling on the inside of that. Again, I think that's probably more than I would even show with that. But like, you know, you're getting a little bit of these highlights wrapping around that way. And so that might be a way of just showing a little bit more internal information in here on this character after you get the rim light around it. So I don't know. It'd be something to play around with, and I think you could add a little bit more to the silhouette that way. Otherwise, the only other thing I would say is the sky is like all one blue, and I wonder if you could get just a very subtle, let's see which blue that is first. So I'll drag that blue like right there. And so instead of doing that, do a very subtle gradient on it with that blue. Maybe rotate this 90 degrees, and just by doing a little bit like that, and maybe even from this, we don't make this completely white, we make this slightly darker blue. What's that do? So I mean, even something like that, you know, you get just a little bit more of this feel of like it's not completely solid. And I think that that helps with all the other things you got going on here. So I don't know. I would play around with a little bit more of that. I think all of the text looks good to me for a giant block of text. I mean, it's like it's one of those things that it's like I, I think the shirt, or at least the shirt you want to make, dictates that there's a giant block of text. Like it doesn't always seem like it is the best thing design wise. But if you think that the people who would buy this shirt would want the shirt to have every campaign on it, then that's possibly a reason to have all of that. But the other question is like, what if it just was the Chronicles of Earth? Like, what if it just had that text with some other like symbol on it? Maybe this symbol here, right below it. Would that draw more appeal from the audience you're targeting? So otherwise, it's looking good. Clear the clipboard. Jonah. Okay. Yeah, so I think we talked about this one in class. I probably had a decent amount of comments there. I'm not view the rulers right now. Smart guys, not view rulers, hide rulers. Guides. There we go. It's not rulers, it's guides. That's right. So I think this is looking good as a start. I think the character needs a little bit more work, just to kind of show him some volume and just a little bit of cleanup work in here for stuff like we get all sorts of layers in here, don't we? There we go. Anyway, like that little hitch right there in the eyeball, I think that there's a significant number of those you could play around with. I think this kind of comes to these like solid stops that I like just as a preference I always work on. Still more. There we go. Like, and then I know this is probably getting to be a tired saying, but like even just doing something like that just really adds a little bit of something else to it. Or you could play around with it completely differently, or you could make your own profile curve. So we talked about how to do that. I think that playing with that a little bit in some of this would really help make this a more interesting illustration. So maybe we do something like that. Like, what is that profile curve at? Or should you manually go through and widen it and stuff like that? On top of that, I feel like he's a little flat in his color, and so just by Control C, Control F, making this a touch darker and doing what we talked about with the eraser tool. Is my eraser really big or really small? Let's see. Apparently really small. There he is. Just by going in here and just erasing out some areas, you're going to start getting some options for some shadows on it. And like that's not really probably the shadow I would use. I would definitely take the stroke off of it. But you can start using that to sort of generate you some shadows in here and just get them a little bit more volume. And maybe that you just need something like that on them to, and that may even be too dark. Like you maybe even play around with dropping the transparency of it just to give them a little bit of volume, right? I think he just needs a little bit of that, and it doesn't always have to be that, right? Like you have this white shape here. I can do Control C, Control F, pasted it in front, but I maybe wouldn't want to move that up higher. Where is that at? I had it highlighted, didn't it? Okay, did I make a new one? It's that one. So maybe I would grab this layer, pull it all the way up to the top here, make it dark gray. Did that work? Oh, it's the one I have selected. I changed the other one to dark gray accidentally, I think. Select this one, make it darker gray, and then just play with the opacity, maybe 40, maybe set this to multiply, and that way those other colors come through, and then we could just, again, just sort of erase some chunks out of this, and just so we get a little bit more of that drop shadow feel. I think just by doing a little bit of that, take that stroke off of it, we start getting some volume in this character, and I think that really would help to round them out. On top of that, we have this like giant background color that's all a solid fill, and I think I'm going to drag this up here, keep that color, but make it a gradient using that color. Right. And then this color, maybe make it similar but different, maybe orange. Is that too orange? So I mean, it could be a whole range of stuff. I feel like that's a little too orange. We could get something close. We go with that. Nope. Go with that. Get my color pickers. You know, lighten that up a little, darken it a little. So maybe we're just playing around with something like that, right? You know, rotate this 90 degrees. Pull this one forward a little bit so it comes up into a little bit. So just by doing a little bit of something like that, it's just giving it a little bit more volume, right? And I could add that same gradient if I wanted to, because I have it as a gradient now. I can make that a swatch, right? And I can just add that to everything in here. And it just does a little bit of something more to it. Again, I'm not crazy about that gradient entirely. I would play with that more. That's not a good color that it's blending to. This is, you know, the wrong angle on that. And so, you know, we can maybe negative 90 on that one. So, yeah, just playing around with it, though, kind of giving it a little bit more of this refined feel to it. And so right now it's feeling a little simple. I actually like a lot of what you got going on with the text, and I like your maze back here. I get that people were freaked out by that, but and so you got some pretty neat what was it that what was somebody mentioned in here that was kind of interesting? No, I don't see it. I'm probably overlooking it, whatever it is. So yeah, you got a lot of neat things going on here that I think that, you know, it just needs a little bit more tightening up to get it feeling professional. I think these little guys are neat, and I actually think this text is pretty neat. So it almost makes me wish that text were here. I mean, I don't, doesn't have to be, but that's kind of my thinking is like, that's some really neat text. This is kind of a little out of the box. So I'd also like kind of feel like, you know, we grab this. Can I do the maybe an effect on it? Object, envelope, distort, make with warp, preview. So can maybe already have that on it a little bit, but let's just sort of do a bulge. Okay, and bring that a little bit further forward. Maybe make this a little wider. I don't know. I'm just kind of playing around now with the. I get the option to go back into that bulge. I do. So maybe we don't even do bulge. Maybe we do inflate. So I don't know. You got some options here that you can play with. Shells. So like just playing around with these and try to see if you can get something that's. So that's not bad. That's kind of neat. And then you scale that up. Maybe even push it in. No, it's a little much. So like even, I don't know, like just something that like really makes that text pop out. I'm not sure I like the flag thing because it makes it asymmetrical, but you get the idea. Really like push that and make it like a larger part of the name, because that's sort of name recognition is what's going to pull people in. But overall, yeah, it's looking pretty good. Just need, I'd also say fill in some of these like empty spots, just because cereal boxes are packed with stuff. I didn't really want to keep that data. Mars. Actually, let's go ahead and look at the Illustrator file. How are we doing here? Got a few more to go. Going a little slower today than I had been. So yeah, overall, my thoughts. The background feels a little simple. I think we could do something, possibly just not a solid color. Like I wonder even if you could just do Control C, Control F. I just pasted that in there. Did a simple gradient, and instead of linear, do radial. Right. Take this all the way out to the edges. So click here. Oh, here we'll play with that a little bit more later, and then I can just set this to this new object I put in here. I can just set that to something like multiply, right? And then use my gradient tool. Where's my gradient tool? Okay, there it is. To really like push this gradient just to the outside edges, right? So maybe not quite as much. Fall off. I don't know, you just kind of play around with it, and maybe getting just a little bit of something in there to just kind of liven that up a little bit. That's going to take care of some of that, and then I think the rest is we just need some more information back here. I think you get some really nice things going on with this hook on the top. Like it feels like it would be very easy to make that happen again here. Control C, Control F to paste it in front. And then just erase out part of that. Right. And so I got a nice little hook on the front now. Set that to screen 20. And so just doing a little bit of stuff like that just to add some more volume. Maybe even do that one again. Control C, Control F. Similar. Make it entirely white. Erase all of it except for a little jaggy shape down through there. Screen 10. So just adding like little things like that, you may be able to start adding a little bit more volume to this. Um, I notice these a lot, that they're very like um, same shape all the way through. So I think just a little bit of cleanup on those would really, really do a lot. Just trimming those up a little bit, uh, like that, just to kind of clear off some of those rounded edges. Um, the alternative to using the blob brush for that, of course, would be to just do a pencil stroke, right, and make that pencil stroke that color of red you're using there. Yeah, I'll switch that. No, it's not the same color of red. Make that a little bit larger. All right, maybe not 10, maybe more like 8, and then just add one of these to it, or add one of these other profile curves to it, and you're just going to get a little bit more, something that you can vary up a little bit. And so that might be an easier way to get some of that texture in there. So I don't know. That's just something I play around with. I think the mermaid's looking kind of neat. This is something I've mentioned to other people. Again, Control C, Control F, just to add a highlight on this may carry a lot of weight as well. Nope. And went too far again. And so by doing this, you can get a little bit of like internal profile. Like, let's say you wanted to add a little bit about the, like, well, I guess she doesn't have legs. I was going to say the split of the fin right there or something. You could add a little bit of a dip in there, and I probably wouldn't add all that. I'll trim out some of that, but just get some of the profile shape there. And when we go back to that, well, I get trimmed out too much now. But we could go in there and add in a little profile line just to kind of make that work a little bit better. But I think the biggest thing is like it still just feels like there needs to be more environment in here. So I feel like a little bit of a pond around her. Somebody mentioned a pirate ship silhouette, or I feel like there was a very distinct mountain range in there that kind of told us something. Or even if it's just like, Peter like flying through the air, like his silhouette in front of the moon or something. I don't know, like something like that. I feel like there's a little bit more you could do with the text in here, even if it's just, like something that's just not a solid color. You got the nice drop shadow, but I wonder if you could, maybe even play around with a little bit of like gradient in it, or something just to kind of even it up. And I also noticed that some of this edge I think could be cleaned up just a touch. It just feels a little lumpy, and sort of takes away from some of the smoothness of the idea. Clear clipboard. Okay, Mary. Pr2.2. Oh, yeah, you had two of them. That's right. So let me just open both of them up. I think this guy here he's pretty close. I think some of the text here could be just, this is such a nice shape. You get these kind of sharper, like inconsistent edges, where this feels kind of rounded, and just kind of making it feel a little bit more like a claw mark. I think the bear himself is very cute. I wonder like what else you could do with some of the shadowing in here, but I wouldn't go overboard. Like you get a lot on his ear there, and then you get some of these here, but I wonder if like that shadow would just extend up a little bit more on his belly. A lot of other people also mentioned that his back was a little maybe too deep in there. Didn't really bother me though. It kind of made me feel like he just collapsed. And yeah, I think he's a cute style. I think you're getting some of that bubbly like blob brush shape in here too. Some of it feels intentional, so I'm not like this feels pretty good here. Like this is, even though it's got those rounded edges, you feel like you got some some variation in your line weight there. And I feel like if you got a little bit more of that in there too, even if it was, let's see, go in here and just adjust this tangent a little bit more. Like even just some stuff like that to, just to make sure, you know, it's got its own little variation in the lines, I think would help. This is one where I actually really like the solid background because it's just kind of got that like cartoony feel. And I think that these, you use the right amount of shadow underneath him. So I'm not too concerned about that. Yeah, I'm like, there's something about the word can't, the way it's written, and I wonder, like, bear, it looks like the EAR is a touch smaller, and I wonder if maybe you would do that with the ANT. I mean, not make it significantly smaller, but just very slightly smaller. That's a nitpicky note, so I don't know. This little guy's cute. I like the style. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot that I would say on this one specifically. I feel like um, the shadows, like because of the way I like some of the stuff going on in here in the shadows, right? It's implying that there's more texture on the inside, but then on the top here, like all this feels very smooth, and so I wonder if you just, you know, extended that a little bit more. Let's grab that, and then get my bob brush and just kind of just add it a little bit more, like even if it's just something like this. That one's probably too much. And then go back, select that, trim it out just a little. So I wonder if just doing a little bit of something like that would add enough, like a little bit more texture to his back. Does it make sense? You don't really even have to go in here and add any texture. You're just implying the texture, and our eye fills it in. I feel like I need a little bit of that, and I need a little bit more of that on the feathers too. Yeah, I think that I mean, there are other things that I could say, but I'm not. That's interesting. So I think that if you look at that, it feels like it's got an outline around it, right? Do you see that? Let's set this to 100. So you can see it almost feels like it has a light outline around it. And I think that what we're getting is just an anti-aliasing around there between that blue and this black. I don't think there's an actual stroke around there that's causing that to kind of vibrate. There's a little bit missing, but I looked at it and I was like, why does it look like there's a highlight around it? Hopefully that doesn't do that when it prints, but it's the anti-aliasing of blending between this color and this color. I didn't really tell it when it printed, so it probably is going to print correctly. It's almost more like an effect of the monitor. We see it a little bit here around the headphones too. So yeah, overall I think these are looking pretty good. Those are just some small tweaks I would suggest. Patrick. Oh yeah, I remember now. I was trying to remember which one this one was. I got it now. So I think you got a lot of really good feedback on this one. So I don't want to add too much other than what people were saying. I think some of the line work could use some cleanup. Like you got, you know, some little red spots poking through here, and these lines are, you know, it's like it almost makes it there. It just needs to extend on down and make it, you know. And then these, again, maybe this is just a pet peeve of mine, this where it just kind of comes to an end. I wonder if that just helps, you know. And then that actually even gives you the option of extending that a little bit if you want to, and it still just kind of stays clean. I feel like there's a lot of instances where this stuff just kind of overlaps there, and like that's just a detail. But I also feel like that it's a little bit of a method of working that is probably slower than necessary. Because I think what you've done is you've drawn all of the outlines and then you've gone in and you've manually tried to color them in. And that means you have to try to stay within the lines here, and these are evidences of where that's not working that well, you know. And so it's a little bit of a sloppier way of working where um, what I could have done is just drawn this shape for his hair, right? Um, Including underneath the ear. Like imagine this is just one solid piece that is completely underneath the ear, and then draw that shape for his ear and just start adding outlines to it. And I feel like this is it's probably causing you some pain just trying to fill all this stuff in and keep it clean because you're getting so much stuff to work with. It's kind of like you're doing it in sort of the traditional coloring sheet way. I think some of the notes that people made of adding a little bit more to extending him down here. The reason this feels weird is because it feels like it's cutting him off right at the pant line, like where his belt would be, and we're getting cut off right there. So it feels like we're cutting him off at the shirt. So even just extending that down into his pants a little bit and cutting him a little bit more like around the zipper area, or vice versa, just cutting it a little higher and filling up the page with him a little bit more. Um, I was a little thrown that there's no strings or even like sort of an implication of strings. So I just want to, that's just a technicality for me. Like I just want some sort of indication, even if it's a very light line occasionally that has, like a really faint highlight. Cancel. Right, and so that's maybe even brighter than I would, maybe 0.25 or something, just so we're getting a little bit of that, like those faint lines across through here, and then select it. If I hold Alt, I can drag it. I think a fiddle has 4. So just doing like a little bit like that, and you could even do like take down the transparency of 1 or 2 of them, right? And so they feel like it feels like those are a little smaller and less noticeable, right? So you can play around just doing something like that pretty quickly and get a pretty nice level of detail in there. If you leave the mouth out because you like the way that looks, you think it communicates him better, that's one thing. Leaving it out because it was hard, like that's you can do it. You just gotta use the reference, kind of come up with what lines indicate that. Even if it's just like, I don't know, I don't have any idea what sort of lines he actually would use. I don't need that. Nope. And then fill none. My pencil. Like, even if it were just that. What's going on? That should have a stroke to it now. Oh, I bet I drew it underneath the character, didn't I? So I mean, like even something like that, like it's not anything special, or even that or that, but it's still going to kind of get the point across a little bit. And I think, just play around with how it is you can simply define that. I like the idea of having the patch on his arm or something like that. And to me, his hair is a little more yellow than it was in the video. I've never played this game, so maybe I'm kind of in the minority there. Maybe people would recognize the character, but it feels like it needs a little bit more than that to me. The biggest thing though is I think you need to come up with some more Oh, and the arm getting smaller as it goes up. I feel like it needs to go into here a little bit more. I think finding some good work practices would definitely help because this feels like a really like slow way of working. And so if you're still needing some more help with that, like get with me in the next couple of days, and I'll kind of show you the way that I think would probably benefit you. So also agree with some of the shadow comments. Like it's looking pretty good under his neck. Just needs a little bit more to bring out some of that volume. Ooh, Ryan. The hunger. It's a heavy one. Okay, and this video is getting a little long, but um, it's all right. We're going to say replace. So it's looking for the Goosebumps title. I'm just gonna go ahead and hit ignore right now, and I'll also open up your JPEG just so we can see it. Um, so I agree with a lot of people's comment. To make that come in without having to worry about the font, you just select it, and looks like you've kind of done it with this here. Just convert it to edit. I think you just do a here, let's do it with R.L. Stein's name here. Linked file goosebumps title.ai. Okay, so maybe you did the Goosebumps title in a separate file, and then it's linked it instead of copied it in. So you'll probably want to do embed to bring that in. So we can go to objects. Let's see, expand appearance or expand depending on which one it needs, and that will convert it to the correct format. I think this illustration is looking pretty good. I'm not crazy about this like gradient thing going on in the tree back in the background. I think you could probably just pull off some highlights. A lot of this is looking nice, but I kind of agree that like the fence is a little strong. What is happening? I bet you worked in like CC or something, and this has got a lot of like things it's trying to reference that I can't figure out. That's the linked file, so I'm just gonna make it invisible. And that also seems like a linked file. Okay, so now we can go in here with this stuff. Oh wow. That's busy. So, double click it. You got stuff grouped a lot in here, so. Oh, that's your sort of overlay to darken that up, yeah. So I think these dark lines that make up the fence, I would kind of either play down their size a little bit or make them like slightly opaque. Like you know how when something's small, it's far away, you can almost see through it because it's so like all the light kind of wraps around it. So I think you could probably play with that just a little bit, or even just making the lines not not completely uniform. I like the house. I like that it's appropriately creepy. I feel like we could maybe even push in on it just a touch and trim out some of the street and this down here. But somebody else made a pretty good point, which was if you were to fill the entire page with the fill the entire page with the illustration and just have Goosebumps, They Hunger, and the road, I think that would actually work a little bit better. And then some of the stuff up here where it's not quite as interesting, you could, like with the moon and the tree, you could have R.L. Stein's name up there or something like that. So look at the JPEG again. So I think that's looking pretty good. The background's looking alright. I think the spine is working. The back cover feels to me like a scanned-in version of the book that you've just imported in here as an image, and it is. So you just scanned in the image or just had the image from online somewhere and just have it in here as a raster thing. And so that's fine to use this as reference, but I would just try to use it as just reference. Like use it to figure out maybe how you want to, what text you want to put in there, maybe even some of the layout, but try coming up with your own layout in that and not borrowing so heavily from the book. Something that works pretty well is this like melty vignette. Everything in R.L. Stine's books are melty and globby and gross. So you could probably just play around with that a little bit to to get that working. But yeah, don't use just a scan in of the book cover as it already exists. So okay. Oh, one last thing on this one. I do feel like you could do a little bit of something to emphasize these figures. I think once you make it bigger, they'll be a little bit more clear. But even just making they kind of have these red eyes, just making that a little bigger, and or maybe even just giving them like a little bit of a highlight, or turning them green or something slightly, just something that pops them out of the shadows a little bit more. Like if I raise up a little bit and look at it from a slightly different angle, it's not as like they pop out a little bit more, but I think that it needs a touch more emphasis on those. Okay, Teresa. Oh yeah, and I think you got some pretty good comments on this one too. I feel like his hat. Let's look at him in Illustrator here. Okay. I think that whatever is happening in his hat here starts to vibrate at certain. See, it's kind of getting like these weird, like repeating wavy patterns, and so I think that looks like a blend of lines, which is a very interesting way of getting that. So I think maybe you could. I don't know. That's not too bad. I almost want to see some more solid shapes. I also see like his hair disappears here, and I think that that's one of those things that you can pretty easily just go in there and add a little highlight around the edge. Control C, Control F, make it lighter, erase everything except for a potential little highlighter on the hair, and maybe even one back here as well. Right. Very faint, but it doesn't even have to be that bright. You could probably even do something that's like 20% gray or something. Or do it completely white like we've done here and just play with the opacity. So just adding a little bit of that to break up the shape of his head. I'll probably have it shaped a little different than what I have there. I feel like some of these shapes could be cleaned up too. Like it's got that lumpiness there. It feels a little jagged in some spots, and I'm not sure it's an intentional jaggedy. So I mean, just going in here, grabbing this vert there, and just telling it to smooth it may help with some of that. That's the one. And so just by doing that, we kind of round off that shape now and get a little bit more control of it. Some of them I think you intended to be that way, but some of them I think just need to be a little more intentional in their shape. Overall, I think it's a very good likeness of them. This is neat that you're using this like banding of the lines to come up with that. I almost like this is a let's go in here and look at this. So you're using a blend. So we get a blend option. You're doing smooth color, but you're doing it of the outline, I think. So if we did a specified step and change this number to something like 50, so we start actually getting some interestingness there on the on what that does to the illustration. And so I actually really think that that's a neat option for how to do some interesting shading. I'm not sure that this is getting the result you would want, but I think it's kind of a neat option. So uh, it's interesting that you're doing that. But in some of the spots, as you get to a certain point, and it starts trying to interpret it, we get these weird um, flickery patterns. And that's just kind of because of the pixel to distance ratio. That's such a small line that when we get to a certain distance, it doesn't always know which lines to draw. I'm kind of I kind of feel like you need to do a little bit of something with the text, even if it's just like, I don't know, maybe separated a touch more. But I like it. I liked it at first to look at it and I have no idea what it says. And then if I look a little more closely, I'm like, oh, okay. It's got a good combination of feeling like graffiti, feeling like um, potential a different type of writing, a different language of writing, and then once you see it, you're like, oh, I get it. It's kind of hard to read. I feel like there's something going on in his forearm here. That just feels like that point goes a little too far or something. Getting this shape to his forearm feels like that's going to be an important part of kind of working that out. And I think part of what's weird to me is there's no shadow underneath his arm too. So playing with that a little bit, you got some really neat stuff going on in the shirt here. And so I think that adding some of that and a few other places, maybe in the hat, might be neat as well. I really like the addition of the dark shadows on the rockets. It almost makes me want to see just a touch more of it to fill out some of these areas to the side, but just a touch, not a lot. Otherwise, I think it's making some serious progress. I think it just needs a little bit more cleanup on it. So overall, looking pretty good. Let's see. I think we got one more. Travis. Let's see. Let's see what you got first. Okay, we got that. This is the Mafia illustration. I'm guessing this is the final where you've imported that in. Be an original. I like the style. I wonder if you did this yourself. This looks really good. I bet you did. But yeah, I like the t-shirt template you've got going on here. I think although your critique was a little short, I think that we hit a lot of the interesting and more important things to note. One, I think that the shadows can be a little bit more. I want to say played with. I think we could probably combine all of these shapes. That way you don't have as much of the as much stuff to mess around with, and we can combine those with what is it? The shape builder tool. So click here, shape builder tool. Just going to drag across all of them, just combine them all into one shape. Didn't really want them all being just solid white, and so we can just keep adding all this stuff until it turns it all into one color. Okay, and then I'm just going to make that completely black as the fill. You still see that there's some stuff that we could add, but that's just a way you can start combining all these into one shape. some of them may not be shapes. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe some of them are sort of strokes that are filled in. But once we get all those in there, then I think you could do even something with like a gradient if you wanted to. Instead of a solid color, just adding a gradient that falls off toward the ground instead of upward. And then you can even extend this down further, right? And so it kind of blends out to the color, and maybe not even start with completely black. Maybe that would go a little bit like that or something. I don't know. So there's some stuff you could do there. I think that playing with the shadows is like it's just such a big element. You don't want it to look exactly like a mirror of the original. I think the other thing is there needs to be some slight inside lines here. You get some nice ones on the face, just something that kind of indicate maybe where the hand is, where the bottom of the gun is. A little bit more of that information. Like I personally wouldn't mind seeing like a little bit of a highlight here on this arm or on his jacket, on his arm, maybe where his arm is hanging down there. Just some really light indicating lines that kind of tell us what we're looking for. Um, and then that would include maybe I feel like that there's a top of Capone's hat up here that just got a real slight, that this isn't the top is up here. So maybe just a real slight line there, maybe even a slight line here to kind of give us that. His I don't mind as much. For some reason Capone's hat kind of feels like it needs something to me. Boy, I just messed that one up good, didn't I? Let's go back and look at the original. Yeah, so that, yeah, a lot of little things like that. I think this one would be interesting to see in different colors. Like how does this come off on red, on blue, on whatever? Because there's so much emphasis on white in this like background. So like what could you do like with this on a different color? Is that going to tone down some of the starkness? Because you know people may want their T-shirt in a different color other than white. Um, just a personal preference. I only buy like undershirts in white because if I have a white T-shirt, that means I can't eat anything with spaghetti sauce in it. Um, so I mean, it may be that like thinking about that in terms of T-shirt design, what does that do? But I like the idea, and I think it's a neat inside joke for people who may recognize some of these people. Again, none of them are savory characters, but it's got that gangster feel to it, and I know a lot of people who are really interested in the mafia and mobsters, and it's got a whole like noir thing going on here. So I think that you did a good job of selling that as the style. I would maybe go in here and play just a little bit more with some of these details that get a little vague, like the eyes here. Like, is that's let me go in here and look. Right, yeah, his eyes get just a touch vague, and maybe just sharpen those up a little bit. Like it's going to be a pretty big T-shirt, and people are going to be able to get this close to it. And so just make sure that some of these details in the face, like his looks awesome. I think that Capone's gets a little bit more vague in some areas. I think you could add just a touch more detail, and I kind of feel the same way with this guy. Like some of his areas through here get a little blobby. So I don't know, just something to play around with. So overall, good work. Let me know if anybody has any questions. We're about a minute away from this video being an hour long, so I feel like I should probably just keep talking for a minute just to see if I can get to an hour, but I've recorded hour-long videos before, so we'll go ahead and stop it at exactly 59 minutes. No, 59 minutes and a few seconds. So let me know if you have any questions. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.